mergers and acquisitions are at their highest level in history, but why are buyouts running so strong? And what are the best tactics to navigate one successfully? Jeremy Harbour, a serial entrepreneur who now helps other business owners to buy companies through his own, the Harbour Club, has been involved in a number of distressed deals over the past year, and he joins me down the line now. Jeremy, why are M&As and deals involving distressed businesses so popular now?
We've just gone through a huge period of economic turmoil in the world, and when people are looking to do deals, I think they always want to buy at the bottom of the market. And I think most people have a view now that as the global economy starts to recover, this is probably the cheapest asset prices are ever going to be. And also, normally during these distressed times, then businesses or customers within businesses tend to be a lot more entrenched. So it's much harder to go out and win organic business or grow organically. So most people see M&A as a sort of fairly cheap, easy way to expand their business during these sorts of times.
When people are looking to do this, you talk of transaction naivety. What do you mean by this?
Most entrepreneurs are very well versed in growing businesses or very well versed in kind of sales and marketing, but most of them have never bought a company before. That's relatively understandable. It's kind of a different rung of the entrepreneurial ladder. Learning in business is quite an expensive process. And just like learning to walk, it can hurt a little bit when you get it wrong. The first thing that people often do is bowl in believing they need to raise lots of money and spend lots of money in order to complete an acquisition. I think people lose sight of the structure of a deal and focus too much on the value of a deal. So they focus too much on price and not enough on structure. And generally, if you go bowling into something for the first time with a big pile of money, chances are it's going to get taken off you and you're going to lose that money. So the other thing is also protecting yourself. I mean, I've done lots of distressed acquisitions, and people are always frightened about taking on debt or taking on the problems of the previous company. It's knowing how to insulate the deal correctly.
So what should you be thinking about when growing by acquisition?
There's a huge degree of mindset stuff that comes into it to begin with. So I think entrepreneurs get very much bogged down in the day-to-day running of a business. And I think the first thing you have to do is really transition from being a business runner to a business owner and behaving more like a shareholder. Now, a shareholder is really only interested in building shareholder value.
How do you know if expanding a business through an acquisition is the right fit?
I think my one-size-fits-all solution to all businesses' problems is an acquisition. I actually genuinely believe if you have succession planning issues, the best way to find somebody really good at running a company that looks like yours is to find somebody running a company that looks like yours. Acquire a business that has a great CEO is a great way of getting a great CEO. If your issue is access to customers, you can make a strategic acquisition that gives you access to customers. Tactical or strategic M&A can be used to solve an awful lot of problems that entrepreneurs typically face, but they're normally bogged down, as I say, as running their business. So bogged down running your business, you're always thinking about what sales and marketing activity you're going to engage in. But sales and marketing is risky. You spend money and you hope to get customers. When you buy a company, you effectively inherit that inertia, those customers that come with the business. So I used to joke when people ask me who was my biggest competitor, I used to say apathy, because fundamentally not many people really care who their supplier is. So why not buy some of that apathy, if you like, and inherit those customers that tend to stick with companies through thick and thin.
But there must be pitfalls. What are they?
A lot of people do acquisitions for the wrong reasons. So they're doing them for ego. So, they're very keen to buy the company, change the sign above the door. A great example was in the UK, T-Mobile bought One-to-One. One-to-One didn't have a fantastic reputation for customer service at the time they bought them, but they felt the first thing they wanted to do was change all of the branding to T-Mobile. They changed all of the call centers to T-Mobile, and they then set about completely restructuring and changing the business. Well, then all the disruption and all the upheaval that occurred during that transitional phase was all under their brand.
So if you are looking at a distressed company, how do you know if it's gone too far to be resuscitated?
Used to try and have a plan and wouldn't do anything, almost paralyzed. Analysis paralysis, they call it, which is where you really go into the detail before you do the deal. And I love the expression, I think it's a Mike Tyson quote, that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And when you do a deal, there's always going to be some traffic, and I can't tell you where the traffic on the journey is going to be. So I take a much more bullish approach now of just going in and basically finding out what I've got after I got in there. I mean, one of the things is I didn't get it into trouble, so I can't really be held responsible for the trouble it's in. All we can do is do our best to try and save the employees, save the customers, and restructure the business. And if it doesn't work, all we've done really is come full circle back to the point that it was, which is that unfortunately it has to close its its doors.
And for those selling a business, what should they be aware of?
Typically, we get involved in businesses that are just in trouble, not in administration. And when they're in trouble, the client relationships are often great, but the creditors have had all their bridges burned. So you can make massive assumptions around which creditors aren't going to work with you going forwards. But sometimes just that breath of fresh air of having somebody coming in that's doing something different can be enough to get all the creditors back on side again. I think most creditors don't want the kick in the nuts of losing money when a business goes bust, but they don't want the double. They don't want two kicks in the nuts, which is losing the money and losing the customer going forward, so losing all that revenue going forward. So I think once faced with that as a reality, people are much more likely to come to the table and talk sensibly, particularly, as I said, if you're not the guy that got it in trouble in the first place.
Well, finally, there have been a lot of regulations recently, so a help or hindrance?
All regulation does is it creates ropes around the boxing ring, and the fight goes on inside those ropes. And I think often regulation creates as much opportunity as it does hindrance. I mean, there's a whole range of HR consulting businesses that wouldn't have existed 20 years ago, and a whole range of other businesses. So I think really as entrepreneurs, you can spend your time moaning about where the ropes are, or you can spend your time getting on with the fight. And I'm much more interested in getting on with the fight.